Jake Martinez stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around at the massive space station floating in the darkness of space. Nexus Prime was bigger than anything he had ever seen back on Earth. The station spun slowly, creating artificial gravity that felt almost like home. Bright lights lined the corridors, and beings from dozens of different worlds walked past him carrying bags and equipment. "This place is huge," said Kevin Brown, Jake's roommate from Earth. Kevin carried a heavy bag filled with rock samples from their home planet. He studied geology and planned to learn about minerals from other worlds. The two young men had traveled for 3 weeks to reach the famous Galactic Academy. Jake nodded and pulled his own bag higher on his shoulder. Inside were his engineering tools and some pictures from home. At 19 years old, he was one of the youngest humans ever accepted to study at the Academy. His acceptance letter had surprised everyone back in Texas, including himself. Other students moved around them in the busy arrival area. Jake saw a tall, thin creature with 6 arms made of what looked like living crystal. Its body reflected the station lights in rainbow patterns. Next to the crystal being walked a large, slow-moving creature that looked like a giant slug with 2 small arms and friendly eyes. "Look at all these different species," Kevin whispered. "Mom always said the galaxy was full of amazing life, but seeing it is something else." The crystal creature approached them with careful steps. When it spoke, its voice sounded like musical chimes. "Excuse me, are you the human students? I am Zixathara from the Vorthon Collective. I will be in several of your classes." Jake smiled and held out his hand. "I'm Jake Martinez, and this is Kevin Brown. Nice to meet you." Zixathara looked at Jake's extended hand with confusion. After a moment, it reached out with one of its crystal arms and carefully touched Jake's hand. The touch felt cold and smooth like polished glass. "Interesting greeting custom," Zixathara said. "On my world, we share harmonic frequencies to introduce ourselves." The large slug creature moved closer to them. When it talked, its voice was wet and bubbly. "I am Glomar from Moisture Prime. Welcome to the Academy. I hope you will find the learning experience safe and educational." "Thanks," Kevin said. "We're excited to be here. This is our first time off Earth." Glomar's eyes grew wide. "Earth? The Class 12 Death World? You actually live there?" Jake and Kevin looked at each other. "Yeah, that's our home planet," Jake said. "Is that a problem?" Before Glomar could answer, a loud voice echoed through the arrival area. "Attention new students. Please report to Orientation Hall 7 for your safety briefing and class assignments." The group of students began moving toward the orientation hall. Jake noticed that other species gave him and Kevin a wide space as they walked. Some pointed at them and whispered in languages he could not understand. Orientation Hall 7 was enormous. Hundreds of students from across the galaxy sat in curved rows facing a large stage. Jake and Kevin found seats near the middle, with Zixathara and Glomar sitting close by. A tall insect-like creature walked onto the stage. It had 4 legs, 2 arms, and large compound eyes that reflected the room's lights. Its voice was sharp and clear when it spoke. "Welcome, students, to Galactic Academy. I am Dean Velterran. You represent the finest young minds from 47 different worlds. Here, you will learn the most advanced sciences and technologies our galaxy has to offer." The Dean paused and looked across the crowd. "However, before any of you can begin your studies, you must complete our comprehensive safety training program. The universe is dangerous, and knowledge without caution leads to tragedy." Jake felt Kevin shift beside him. They had both read about the Academy's safety requirements in their acceptance materials. "Every student must complete 200 hours of safety instruction," Dean Velterran continued. "You will learn proper handling of dangerous materials, emergency procedures, equipment protocols, and hazard recognition. Only after passing all safety examinations may you proceed to advance coursework." Many students nodded their understanding. Some took notes on electronic devices that floated in the air beside them. The Dean's compound eyes seemed to focus on the human section. However, there is one exception to this requirement. Students from Class 9 Death Worlds and above are exempt from basic safety training and may proceed directly to their chosen studies. A murmur went through the crowd. Many students turned to look at Jake and Kevin. Zixthera's crystal body flickered, with different colors which Jake guessed meant surprise or confusion. Exempt? Glommar whispered, his voice full of shock. But they come from the most dangerous world classification possible. Surely they need the most safety training of all. Jake shrugged. I guess they figure we already know how to handle dangerous stuff. After the orientation, students received their class schedules and dormitory assignments. Jake and Kevin were assigned to share a room in the human section of the student quarters. As they walked through the corridors, other students continued to stare at them. Why does everyone keep looking at us like that? Kevin asked. Probably because we're from Earth, Jake replied. Glommar seemed pretty surprised when we told him. They found their room on the 15th level of the station. It was small but comfortable, with 2 beds, desks, and a window that looked out into space. Jake unpacked his belongings while Kevin arranged his rock collection on his desk. A soft chime at their door announced a visitor. Jake opened it to find Zixthera standing in the hallway, its crystal arms folded in what might have been nervousness. May I ask you both some questions? Zixthera said. My people are naturally curious, and I find myself confused about something. Sure, come in, Jake said, stepping aside. Zixthera entered carefully, as if the room might contain hidden dangers. I have been researching Earth in the Galactic database. Your world is classified as Class 12 Deathworld, the highest danger ranking possible. The database lists hundreds of threats: extreme weather, dangerous predators, toxic plants, unstable geology, and atmospheric conditions that change without warning. Kevin nodded. Yeah, Earth can be pretty tough sometimes. But if your world is so dangerous, Zixthera continued, why are you exempt from safety training? Logic suggests that beings from dangerous worlds would need the most instruction about avoiding harm. Jake sat on his bed and thought about the question. I guess it's because we grew up with all that dangerous stuff. We learned how to deal with it as kids. You learned as children? Zixthera's voice rose to a higher musical tone. Your young are exposed to Class 12 dangers during development? Well, not the really bad stuff, Kevin said. But yeah, we learn to watch out for things, like storms, wild animals, poisonous snakes, and stuff like that. It's just part of growing up. Zixthera's crystal body flickered rapidly through several colors. On my world, our young are kept in perfect safety until they reach maturity. They never encounter any significant dangers. Same with my people, came Glommar's voice from the doorway. The large creature had apparently been listening to their conversation. Our children live in protected environments with constant supervision. The idea of exposing them to danger is horrifying. Jake and Kevin exchanged glances. How do your people learn to handle dangerous situations then? Jake asked. That is why we have extensive safety training, Glommar explained. We must learn through careful instruction what your people apparently learn through direct experience. The next morning, Jake attended his first advanced engineering class. The classroom contained equipment that looked far more sophisticated than anything he had seen on Earth, but the basic principles seemed familiar. Professor Kethrel, a floating gas creature enclosed in a mechanical suit, began the lesson by demonstrating a plasma cutting tool. This device operates at temperatures exceeding 10,000 degrees, the professor announced. Extreme caution is required. Please observe the 47 safety steps necessary for proper operation. Jake watched as the professor went through an elaborate process involving multiple safety checks, protective equipment, and verification procedures. When the demonstration was complete, the professor asked for volunteers to try the exercise. Several alien students raised various appendages, but they were all directed to put on bulky protective suits first. When Jake raised his hand, the professor looked surprised. Human student, you may proceed without protective equipment, as per Academy regulations for your species classification. Jake walked to the front of the class and examined the plasma cutter. It reminded him of the welding torch his father used in their garage back home. He picked up the tool, felt its weight and balance, and made a clean cut through the practice material in one smooth motion. The alien students stared in amazement, Jake had completed in 30 seconds what had taken the professor 10 minutes to demonstrate safely. "How did you know the proper technique?" Professor Kethrall asked. "It's similar to tools we use on Earth," Jake replied. "My dad taught me to weld when I was 12. As Jake returned to his seat, he noticed his alien classmates whispering among themselves in excited tones. Zixthera leaned toward him with a puzzled expression. "You have been using such dangerous equipment since childhood?" "Sure," Jake said. "Dad always said the best way to learn is by doing." 3 weeks had passed since Jake Martinez and Kevin Brown arrived at Galactic Academy. Every day brought new classes and new opportunities for their alien classmates to stare in amazement at human behavior. What seemed perfectly normal to the two Earth students appeared to be acts of incredible bravery or complete madness to everyone else. Jake walked into basic chemistry lab carrying his notebook and a cup of coffee. The laboratory was huge, with workstations designed to accommodate the different body types of various alien species. Some stations had multiple arms for creatures like Zixthera, while others had shallow pools for aquatic beings. Professor Mordeth, a creature that looked like a walking tree with glowing bark, began the day's lesson. Today we will be combining simple reactive compounds. These materials are moderately dangerous and require proper safety protocols. The professor gestured toward a cabinet filled with bottles and containers. Please note that all materials are stored in triple-sealed containment units. You must wear full protective equipment and follow the detailed mixing procedures exactly. Jake watched as his alien classmates began putting on elaborate protective suits. Zixthara wrapped each of its crystal arms in thick padding. Glommar squeezed its large body into what looked like a plastic bubble with armholes. Other students donned helmets, gloves, and various breathing apparatus. The mixing procedure involved 12 separate steps with safety checks between each one. Students had to verify each action with their lab partners and record everything on official forms. The entire process took nearly an hour to combine 2 simple chemicals. When Jake's turn came, he walked to the supply cabinet and examined the bottles. The chemicals inside looked similar to cleaning supplies his mother kept under the kitchen sink back home. He measured out the required amounts, mixed them together in a beaker, and stepped back as a small reaction created a puff of colored smoke. The reaction was larger than expected. Jake waved the smoke away from his face with his hand and continued with the experiment. To him, it seemed like a normal chemical reaction, no different from the science projects he had done in high school. But the classroom had gone completely silent. Every alien student was staring at him in horror. Zixthera's crystal body was flashing bright red, which Jake had learned meant extreme alarm. "Human student Jake," Professor Mordeth said in a shaking voice. "You just handled a class 4 chemical reaction with no protective equipment. That smoke cloud could have contained toxic compounds." Jake looked at the small wisp of smoke still rising from his beaker. "It smells like sulfur and vinegar. Nothing too bad. My chemistry teacher in high school said you can usually tell dangerous fumes by the smell." "You determine toxicity by smell?" Glommar asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes," Jake replied. "Though you have to be careful with that method. Some really dangerous stuff doesn't smell at all." The alien students exchanged looks of disbelief. Zixthera raised one of its crystal arms. "Professor, how does one learn to identify dangerous chemicals by scent without being harmed by exposure?" Professor Mordeth looked confused. "One does not. That is why we use detection instruments and safety protocols." Jake shrugged. "We learn by experience, I guess. You start with small amounts and pay attention to how things react. After a while, you get a feel for what's dangerous and what isn't." After chemistry class, Jake met Kevin at the cafeteria for lunch. His roommate was carrying a small container filled with what looked like ordinary dirt. "How was geological survey class?" Jake asked as they sat down with their food. Kevin grinned and opened the container. "Great. We got to examine samples from different worlds. Look at this soil from Kepler 442b. He reached into the container with his bare hand and pulled out a handful of the alien soil. Around them, several students who had been eating suddenly stopped and stared. "Kevin Brown," came a familiar, bubbly voice. Glommar approached their table with careful steps. That material has not been tested for biological hazards. You should not touch it directly. Kevin looked at the soil in his hand. It's just dirt. Glommar. I've been handling dirt since I was old enough to walk. My mom used to find me eating mud pies in the backyard when I was 3. You consumed untested soil as a child? Glommar's eyes grew wide with shock. Most human kids do. Kevin explained. It's how we build up immunity to different bacteria and stuff. My little sister still eats dirt sometimes, and she's 8. Glommar sat down heavily at their table. Your species allows children to consume potentially dangerous materials to build biological resistance? Well, not dangerous stuff, Kevin said. Just normal dirt. Though I guess some of it might have had chemicals from fertilizers and things. Dad always said a little dirt never hurt anyone. Jake nodded. Same at my house. We played outside all the time, caught bugs, climbed trees, swam in the creek. Mom only worried if we were gone too long or came home bleeding. Bleeding? Zixthara had approached their table without them noticing. Its crystal body was flickering through various colors rapidly. Your parents allowed you to sustain injuries during recreational activities? Not serious injuries, Jake said. Just cuts and scrapes. That's how you learn to be careful. If you fall out of a tree, you remember to test the branches next time. Over. The following days, more incidents occurred that baffled the alien students. During advanced materials class, Lisa Parker joined their study group. She was a cheerful biology student from Colorado with blonde hair and a bright smile. The class was examining crystal formations that required delicate handling. Professor Vextar, a being made of living metal, explained the safety procedures for moving the specimens. These crystals are extremely fragile and potentially reactive. Each specimen must be transported using mechanical manipulators and kept in isolated containment fields. Lisa watched the demonstration, then raised her hand. Professor, may I try? The direct handling method. There is no direct handling method, Professor Vextar replied. Physical contact could contaminate the specimens or cause harmful reactions. I understand, Lisa said. But on Earth we have similar crystals. I used to collect them as a hobby. Mind if I give it a try? The professor looked uncertain, but nodded. Lisa walked to the specimen table and carefully picked up one of the crystals. With her bare hands, she examined it closely, turning it to catch the light. This is beautiful, she said. The formation patterns remind me of quartz crystals from the mountains near my hometown. See how the facets align? That suggests it formed under steady pressure rather than rapid cooling. She gently placed the crystal back in its container and picked up another one. Her movements were confident and careful, showing years of experience handling delicate objects. The alien students watched in amazement as Lisa examined several crystals without any protective equipment or mechanical aids. When she finished, all the specimens were undamaged and properly classified. How did you learn such precise handling techniques? Professor Vextar asked. Rock hunting with my dad, Lisa replied. We used to hike in the mountains every weekend looking for interesting minerals. He taught me how to handle fragile stones without breaking them. After class, Zixthara approached Lisa with the same puzzled expression it always wore around humans. Lisa Parker, you mentioned collecting crystals as a recreational activity. Was this part of your formal education? Lisa laughed. Oh no, just for fun. Dad and I enjoyed exploring the wilderness and finding pretty rocks. Sometimes we'd camp out for days in areas where most people wouldn't go. Areas where most people would not go? Glommar had joined the conversation. You mean dangerous locations? Well, remote places, Lisa said. Mountains, deserts, places without roads or cell, phone coverage. You have to be prepared for bad weather, wild animals, getting lost, that sort of thing. Wild animals? Zixthara's crystal body began flashing again. You voluntarily entered territories occupied by dangerous predators? Lisa thought for a moment. I guess so. We saw bears, mountain lions, wolves sometimes, lots of snakes. But if you're careful and respectful of their territory, most animals leave you alone. Most animals? Glommar's voice went up in pitch. What about the ones that do not leave you alone? Well, You deal with those situations as they come up, Lisa said calmly. Dad always carried bear spray and taught me how to make noise so we wouldn't surprise anything. The key is being aware of your surroundings and not doing anything stupid. Jake and Kevin nodded in agreement. This conversation was becoming familiar. Every day brought new opportunities for their alien classmates to discover another aspect of human childhood that seemed impossibly dangerous by galactic standards. That evening, the three humans sat in Jake and Kevin's room discussing their classes. Through their window, they could see the stars and several alien ships moving between the space lanes. Have you noticed how everyone keeps staring at us? Kevin asked. Lisa nodded. It's like they expect us to explode or something every time we touch a piece of equipment. Zixthera asked me today if humans have some kind of built-in safety equipment, Jake said. I think they're trying to figure out why we don't follow all the safety rules. Maybe we should explain about Earth, Kevin suggested. Tell them what it's really like to grow up there. Lisa shook her head. I tried that with Glommar. Zixthera sat in the corner of the Academy library, its crystal body glowing softly as it processed information from dozens of data screens floating around it. For the past week, the curious alien had been gathering every piece of information it could find about Earth and human behavior. Glommar approached slowly, carrying a large container of moisture to keep his skin from drying out. Have you discovered anything useful in your research? More than I expected, Zixthera replied, its voice chiming with excitement, but also more confusing than before. Look at these statistics. The crystal being gestured to one of the floating screens. According to galactic safety records, humans have the lowest accident rate of any species at the Academy. They have fewer injuries, fewer equipment failures, and fewer emergency situations than anyone else. Glommar's eyes widened. That cannot be correct. They ignore all safety protocols. That is what makes it so puzzling, Zixthera said. They should have the highest accident rate, not the lowest. Yet the data is clear. Human students complete dangerous tasks faster and more safely than species who follow every safety rule. Perhaps the data is wrong, Glommar suggested hopefully. I thought so too, so I checked with 3 different sources. The pattern is consistent across all Galactic Academy records going back 50 years. Humans consistently outperform other species in dangerous situations. Another alien student approached their table. This was Kefri, a tall, thin creature with 4 arms and large eyes that could see in multiple light spectrums. Kefri was known for being one of the most careful and methodical students in the Academy. I could not help but overhear your discussion, Kefri said in a high, whistle-like voice. I have been conducting my own observations of human behavior. Zixthera's crystal body flickered with interest. What have you discovered? Kefri settled into a chair designed for its unusual body shape. I have been following human student Ryan Foster for the past 3 days, documenting everything he does. Glommar leaned forward eagerly. What did you observe? Behavior that defies all logic, Kefri replied. Yesterday in Advanced Fusion Engineering, Professor Ketherall presented us with a damaged reactor core. The safety manual required a 12-step procedure taking 4 hours to repair safely. Yes, I remember that class, Zixthera said. Most students needed 2 days just to complete the safety checklist. Ryan Foster volunteered to attempt the repair, Kefri continued. He examined the reactor core for exactly 30 seconds, then announced that he had identified the problem. 30 seconds? Glommar gasped. The preliminary safety scan alone should take 20 minutes. Kefri nodded. He said the reactor was making the wrong sound. He diagnosed a complex technical failure by listening to it. That is impossible, Zixthera protested. Reactor cores operate on principles that require detailed analysis and measurement. That is what I thought, Kefri agreed. But Ryan fixed the problem in 10 minutes using tools he improvised from spare parts. When Professor Ketherall asked how he knew what to do, Ryan said it reminded him of his family's truck engine. The 3 aliens sat in stunned silence for a moment. Finally, Glommar spoke. He compared advanced fusion technology to a primitive transportation device. His exact words were, "Same principle, different scale," Kefri reported. He claimed that mechanical problems follow similar patterns regardless of complexity. Zixthara began accessing more data files. This suggests that humans learn to recognize patterns in dangerous situations through direct experience rather than theoretical study. But how do they survive long enough to gain such experience? Glommar asked. Learning about danger through exposure should result in high casualty rates. That is what we need to understand, Zixthara said. I propose we interview the humans directly, ask them to explain their methods. The next day, the three alien students approached Jake Martinez, Kevin Brown, and Lisa Parker after their morning classes. The humans were sitting on an observation deck, looking out at the stars and sharing stories about home. Excuse me, Zixthara said politely. May we ask you some questions about your homeworld? Jake looked up with a friendly smile. Sure. What would you like to know? We are trying to understand how humans learn to handle dangerous situations so effectively, Kefri explained. Your methods are very different from other species. Lisa laughed. We don't really have methods. We just pay attention and use common sense. But you must have formal training, Glommar insisted. How else would you learn to identify mechanical problems by sound or handle toxic materials safely? Kevin scratched his head thoughtfully. I guess we learn by doing stuff. My dad taught me to fix engines when I was 10. You start with simple problems and work your way up to harder ones. Your father allowed you to work with dangerous machinery at 10 years old? Zixthara asked, its crystal body flashing with alarm. Well, he supervised me, Kevin said. But yeah, that's how you learn. You can't understand how an engine works. Just by reading about it, you have to get your hands dirty. Jake nodded in agreement. Same with me. Dad had a workshop behind our house where he fixed tractors and farm equipment. I spent every weekend out there helping him. Were you not concerned about injury? Kefri asked. Of course, Jake replied. But being careful doesn't mean avoiding everything dangerous. It means understanding the risks and taking proper precautions. Lisa joined the conversation. When I was learning to rock climb, my instructor didn't keep me away from heights. He taught me how to use safety equipment properly, then let me practice on real cliffs. You climbed vertical rock faces for recreation? Glommar's voice went up several octaves. It's fun, Lisa said simply. Scary at first, but once you learn the techniques, it's mostly about problem solving and staying calm under pressure. Staying calm under pressure, Zixthara repeated slowly. This phrase appears frequently in human descriptions of dangerous activities. Jake shrugged. Panic gets you killed. If something goes wrong, you have to think clearly and act quickly. Getting scared just makes things worse. The alien students exchanged meaningful looks. This was exactly the kind of information they needed. Can you give us specific examples of dangerous situations you encountered as children? Kefri asked, pulling out a recording device. Kevin thought for a moment. Well, there was the time our barn caught fire during a thunderstorm. I was 12, and Dad sent me up on the roof to spray water while he worked on the ground level. You were placed on top of a burning structure during severe weather? Glommar asked weakly. Someone had to do it, Kevin said. Dad couldn't be. In 2 places at once, and the fire department was dealing with 3 other emergencies. I knew how to handle the hose and how to move safely on wet surfaces. Lisa nodded. Same kind of thing happened to me during a flash flood. I was 14 and our neighbor's house was getting swept away. Mom and I spent 6 hours pulling people out of the water. You entered floodwaters to rescue others? Zixthara's crystal body was now cycling rapidly through different colors. The water wasn't that deep, Lisa explained. Maybe 4 feet at most. I was a good swimmer and we had rope for safety. You can't just stand on the bank and watch people drown. Jake added his own story. When I was 15, a tornado hit our town. Afterward, I helped search collapsed buildings for survivors. It was dangerous because of unstable structures and broken gas lines, but people were trapped and needed help. You voluntarily entered damaged structures that could collapse? Kefri asked. We were careful about it, Jake said. Used proper techniques, worked in teams, listened for warning sounds. The key was knowing what to look for and when to get out. The alien students were taking extensive notes. Every human story revealed new aspects of Earth life that seemed impossibly dangerous by galactic standards. How do human children survive long enough to develop these skills? Glommar asked. Kevin laughed. Most of us don't do anything that dangerous as kids. We start with smaller stuff like climbing trees, riding bikes, swimming in the lake. You build up experience gradually. But even those activities you mentioned would be considered high risk on most worlds. Zixthera pointed out. Really? Lisa looked surprised. Those are just normal kid activities. What do children on your worlds do for fun? Supervised educational games in controlled environments, Kefri replied. Activities designed to eliminate all possibility of harm. That sounds boring, Jake said honestly. Boring but safe, Glommar said firmly. But how do they learn to handle real emergencies? Kevin asked. What happens when something goes wrong that isn't in the rulebook? The alien students looked at each other uncomfortably. This was exactly the weakness in their species' approach to safety that they were beginning to recognize. We follow established protocols, Zixthera said finally. But what if the protocols don't work? Lisa pressed. What if you're in a situation where there's no rulebook to follow? There was a long pause before Kefri answered. That is why we have extensive safety training. To prevent such situations from occurring, Jake shook his head. But you can't prevent everything. Sometimes bad stuff just happens and you have to deal with it. How do you deal with situations you have never encountered before? Glommar asked. You use what you know, Kevin explained. The alien research team had grown larger over the past few days. Word had spread through the academy about their investigation into human behavior, and now 12 different species were working together to understand why humans seemed immune to danger. Zixthera stood before a large group of alien students in Conference Room 7. The crystal being had organized all their findings into a comprehensive presentation. Charts and data displays floated in the air around the room, showing everything they had learned about human safety methods. After 2 weeks of careful observation and interviews, Zixthera announced, We have reached several important conclusions about human behavior patterns. Glommar raised one of his small arms. Please share your findings. My people are very interested in understanding how humans achieve such low accident rates. Zixthera gestured to a floating chart. First, humans do not ignore safety. They simply define safety differently than other species. Where we see recklessness, they see calculated risk management based on experience. A new voice joined the discussion. That makes no logical sense. The speaker was Vorthak, a large insectoid creature from a world where every action was planned in advance. How can ignoring established protocols result in better safety outcomes? Because their protocols are different, Zixthera explained. Instead of following written rules, humans rely on pattern recognition, situational awareness, and adaptive problem-solving skills developed through direct experience. Kefri activated a recording device. We have documented numerous examples of this behavior. Yesterday, I observed human student Danny Cole during emergency response training. The room grew quiet as Kefri began playing the recording. The training scenario involved a simulated reactor leak with multiple system failures. Standard protocol requires evacuation of all personnel and activation of automated safety systems. The recording showed the training facility filled with artificial smoke and flashing warning lights. Alien students could be seen following evacuation procedures in an orderly fashion, just as they had been trained. However, Danny Cole did not evacuate, Kefri continued. Instead, he ran toward the reactor room. Several alien students gasped in shock. Running toward danger during an emergency violated every safety principle they knew. Danny bypassed 6 safety barriers and entered the reactor chamber while radiation alarms were sounding, Kefri reported. He spent exactly 4 minutes inside, then emerged carrying an injured simulation dummy that other students had been forced to abandon. Vorthak clicked his mandibles in confusion. He violated emergency protocols to perform an unnecessary rescue of a training dummy? Not unnecessary, Glommar corrected. In a real emergency, that dummy would have been a living person. Danny treated the simulation as if it were real. Zixthara nodded. When asked about his actions afterward, Danny said the situation reminded him of a chemical plant accident in his hometown when he was 16. He had helped rescue workers evacuate people from a damaged facility. A 16-year-old human participated in industrial accident response? Another alien student asked incredulously. According to Danny, it was not unusual. Kefri replied. He said that in emergency situations, everyone who can help is expected to help regardless of age or formal training. The alien students murmured among themselves. The idea of untrained civilians participating in emergency response was difficult for them to understand. Zixthara activated another recording. We also observed Amy Stevens during medical emergency training. The scenario involved multiple casualties with various injuries requiring immediate treatment. The recording showed Amy moving quickly between injured simulation victims, making rapid decisions about treatment priorities. While other students carefully consulted medical protocols, Amy was already treating patients. Amy completed patient assessment and treatment in 1/3 the time required by students following standard medical procedures, Zixthara reported. Her casualty survival rate was 96%, compared to an average of 68% for other students. How is such performance possible without medical training? Forthak demanded. Amy has medical training, Glommar explained, but not the kind we recognize as formal education. She learned emergency medicine by helping her mother, who was a nurse in a rural hospital. The recording showed Amy explaining her methods to a confused instructor. She said she learned to triage patients during natural disasters, Kefri added. Hurricane Katrina hit her town when she was 12 years old. She spent 3 days helping medical teams treat flood victims. A 12-year-old child providing medical assistance during a major disaster? The question came from Silandra, a floating jellyfish-like creature from an aquatic world. Apparently, this is normal for humans, Zixthara said. They begin learning adult skills and responsibilities at a very young age because their environment requires it. The alien students spent the next hour reviewing more examples of human behavior that defied their understanding of proper safety protocols. Each story revealed another aspect of Earth life that seemed designed to train humans for dangerous situations. I believe we need to test our theory more directly, Forthak suggested. We should observe humans in an uncontrolled, dangerous situation to see how they respond. That would be unethical, Glommar protested. We cannot deliberately place sentient beings in danger for research purposes. Not deliberate danger, Zixthara clarified. But we could observe them during advanced training, exercises that other species find challenging. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The next day, Professor Ketherall announced a special advanced engineering challenge. Students would work in teams to repair a damaged space station simulator while dealing with multiple system failures. This exercise is designed to test your ability to work under pressure, the professor explained. You will face equipment failures, environmental hazards, and time pressure simultaneously. Teams have 4 hours to restore the simulator to full operational status. The exercise took place in a large chamber that duplicated the interior of a damaged space station. Artificial gravity fluctuated randomly, lights flickered on and off, and various alarms sounded throughout the facility. Smoke machines created visibility problems, and the temperature varied from freezing to extremely hot in different sections. Most alien teams approached the challenge methodically, following established repair procedures and safety protocols. They worked slowly and carefully, checking each action against their instruction manuals. The human team consisted of Jake Martinez, Kevin Brown, Lisa Parker, and Danny Cole. The alien observers watched from a safe distance as the 4 humans entered the simulator. What happened next amazed every alien witness. Instead of following the suggested repair sequence, the humans immediately split up and began working on different problems simultaneously. They communicated with brief, efficient phrases and seemed to understand each other's intentions without detailed explanations. Jake crawled into a damaged air duct to repair the ventilation system, while Kevin worked on restoring power to the main computer. Lisa and Danny tackled the artificial gravity generator, a task that required working in constantly changing gravitational fields. They are not following any of the safety procedures, Vorthak observed nervously. But look at their efficiency, Zixithara replied. They have already completed more repairs than the next best team. The humans move through the simulator with confidence, treating each problem as a familiar challenge rather than a dangerous obstacle. When sparks flew from damaged electrical systems, they simply adjusted their positions and continued working. When sections of the floor became unstable, they distributed their weight and kept moving. Jake, the primary coupling is loose, Lisa called out from across the chamber. Got it, Jake replied, somehow knowing exactly which coupling she meant, without further explanation. Kevin, can you reroute power through the backup systems? Danny asked while hanging upside down from a damaged support beam. Already on it, Kevin answered, his hands working inside an open electrical panel while standing in ankle-deep water. The alien observers realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. The 4 humans were not just repairing equipment. They were adapting to changing conditions, solving problems creatively, and working as a coordinated team without detailed planning or communication. How do they know what each other is thinking? Silandra asked in wonder. They read situational cues, Glommar said, beginning to understand. Body language, tone of voice, work patterns. They have learned to communicate efficiently under stress. Where did they learn such coordination? Vorthak demanded. Zixithara had been recording everything. I believe they learned it the same place they learned everything else. On Earth, working together during emergencies is necessary for survival. The human team completed the entire repair sequence in 96 minutes, less than half the allocated time. When they emerged from the simulator, they were dirty, tired, and grinning. With satisfaction, Professor Kethral stared at his instruments in disbelief. All systems are not only repaired but optimized beyond original specifications. How did you improve on the design during a repair exercise? Jake wiped grease from his hands with a cloth. We noticed some inefficiencies in the power distribution system and fixed those too. The morning started like any other day at Galactic Academy. Students from dozens of worlds attended their classes, worked on projects, and discussed theories in the halls. But at 8:47 station time, everything changed when emergency alarms began, sounding throughout Nexus Prime. Jake Martinez was in advanced propulsion theory when the lights flickered and a deep vibration ran through the station's hull. Professor Yellenth, a gaseous being contained in a mechanical suit, immediately began following emergency protocols. All students remain calm and proceed to designated safety areas, the professor announced. This appears to be a minor technical malfunction. But Jake had grown up in tornado country and he knew the difference between minor problems and major emergencies. The vibration pattern felt wrong, like the deep rumble that came before the worst storms. He stood up from his desk. Professor, I think this is more serious than a minor malfunction, Jake said. Before Professor Yellenth could respond, the station's main lights went out completely. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow throughout the classroom. The vibrations were getting stronger and more frequent. Over the station's communication system, Dean Velteran's voice crackled with static. Attention all students and faculty. We are experiencing a cascade failure in the main reactor system. All personnel should proceed immediately to evacuation pods. The alien students began moving toward the exits in orderly lines, just as they had been trained. But Jake was already running in the opposite direction toward the reactor sections. Jake Martinez, where are you going? Professor Yellenth called after him. To help fix the problem, Jake shouted back without stopping. In the corridors, Jake met Kevin Brown and Lisa Parker, who were also heading toward the reactor levels instead of the evacuation areas. Danny Cole joined them at the main lift. Did you feel that vibration pattern? Danny asked as they descended toward the station's core. Yeah, Kevin replied. Felt like sympathetic resonance in the support structure. The whole station could shake itself apart if we don't stop it. Lisa was checking her portable scanner. Radiation levels are climbing but still manageable. We probably have 20 minutes before it gets dangerous. The lift opened onto reactor level 5, where they found chaos. Alien crew members were running evacuation procedures while automated systems tried unsuccessfully to contain multiple failures. Sparks flew from damaged control panels and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. Chief Engineer Morketh, a large crab-like being, was coordinating the evacuation when he saw the 4 human students emerge from the lift. "Students, you must evacuate immediately," Morketh ordered. "This area is extremely dangerous." "We're here to help," Jake said, already examining the nearest control panel. "Absolutely not," Morketh replied firmly. "Safety regulations prohibit student involvement in emergency operations." But Jake was not listening to safety regulations. He was listening to the sounds the reactor was making, reading the patterns in the vibrations and recognizing problems he had dealt with before in different forms. "The primary coolant circulation is failing," Jake announced. "The backup systems can't handle the load, so the reactor is overheating and causing structural resonance." Morketh stared at him in amazement. "How could you possibly know that?" "The diagnostic systems have not completed their analysis." "I can hear it," Jake said simply. "Kevin, can you check the structural dampeners?" "Lisa, we need to get into the reactor core chamber." "Danny, see if you can bypass the safety lockouts on the coolant system." The 4 humans scattered to different tasks without further discussion. They moved with the same coordination they had shown during the simulator exercise, but now the stakes were real. Morketh tried to stop them. "You cannot enter restricted areas without proper authorization and safety equipment." "There's no time for proper authorization," Lisa said, already opening an access hatch that led to the reactor core. "Either we fix this now, or everyone dies when the station breaks apart." Kevin was lying on his back underneath a massive piece of machinery, reaching into spaces that were barely large enough for human arms. "Found the problem with the dampeners. Someone installed the wrong type of coupling. It's creating harmonic feedback. Can you fix it?" Danny called from across the chamber where he was rewiring control systems by touch because the lighting had failed. "Yeah, but I need something to use as a temporary shim," Kevin replied. "Something about 3 inches. Long and half an inch thick." Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a metal pen. "Will this work?" Kevin caught the pen and disappeared back under the machinery. "Perfect. Give me 2 minutes." Meanwhile, Lisa had crawled through the access hatch into the reactor core chamber itself. This was an area that normally required full radiation suits and extensive safety procedures. Lisa was wearing her regular clothes and using a handheld scanner to monitor exposure. "The primary coolant manifold is cracked," she reported over her communicator. "I can patch it temporarily, but someone needs to shut down the secondary reactor while I work on it," Danny said, his hands moving quickly over controls that would have required careful consultation of technical manuals for anyone else. Morketh watched in horror as the 4 humans violated every safety protocol he knew, yet somehow seemed to know exactly what they were doing. "This is madness. You could all be killed." "So could everyone else if we don't fix this," Jake replied calmly while rerouting power through backup systems that were never designed to handle such loads. The alien crew members had completed their evacuation, leaving only Morketh and the 4 humans in the reactor section. Through the viewports they could see evacuation pods launching from the station as other species followed proper emergency procedures. "Lisa, how's that patch coming?" Jake called out. "Almost done," came her muffled reply from inside the reactor core. "The crack is bigger than I thought, but I can reinforce it with some spare shielding material." "Kevin, what's your status?" "Dampeners are stabilized," Kevin reported, sliding out from under the machinery covered in grease and coolant. "The harmonic resonance should stop in about 30 seconds. True to his prediction, the violent shaking that had been threatening to tear the station apart gradually subsided to a gentle vibration, then stopped completely. "Danny, can you bring the secondary reactor back online slowly?" Jake asked. "Already started the sequence," Danny replied. "All systems look good. We should have full power restored in 5 minutes." Lisa emerged from the reactor core chamber, her scanner showing acceptable radiation levels. She was dirty and tired, but smiling. "Coolant system is holding. The patch should last until proper repairs can be made." The 4 humans stood together in the now quiet reactor chamber, having just prevented a disaster that could have destroyed the entire station. Morketh stared at them in disbelief. How did you know what to do? The chief engineer asked. These systems are beyond your level of training. Jake shrugged. Basic principles are the same everywhere. Mechanical failures follow predictable patterns, once you know what to look for. But you worked without safety equipment in highly dangerous conditions, Morketh protested. We were careful, Lisa said. I monitored radiation exposure constantly. We all knew our limits and stayed within them. This was not careful by any recognized standard, Morketh insisted. Kevin laughed. Maybe not by your standards, but we grew up on Earth. This was actually pretty safe compared to some of the stuff we dealt with back home. Over the station's communication system, Dean Velteran's voice announced that the emergency was over, and all evacuation pods could return. The crisis had lasted exactly 18 minutes from start to finish. 2 hours later, Dean Velteran called a special assembly in the main auditorium. The alien students who had been researching human behavior sat in the front rows while Jake, Kevin, Lisa, and Danny were asked to sit on the stage. Today, 4 human students prevented a catastrophic failure that could have destroyed this station and killed everyone aboard, the dean announced. Their actions violated numerous safety regulations and emergency protocols. Murmurs went through the assembled crowd. Many alien students looked confused about whether the humans should be praised or punished. However, Dean Velteran continued, their violations of protocol saved thousands of lives and demonstrated capabilities that no amount of traditional safety training could provide. Zixthera stood up in the audience. Dean Velteran, my research team has spent weeks investigating human safety methods. We would like to present our findings. The dean gestured for Zixthera to approach the stage. The crystal being activated a holographic display that showed all the data they had collected about human behavior. We initially believed that humans ignored safety protocols due to recklessness or ignorance, Zixthera explained. Our research has proven this assumption incorrect. The display showed charts comparing accident rates, emergency response times, and problem-solving efficiency between humans and other species. Humans consistently outperform other species in dangerous situations, not despite their lack of formal safety training, but because of the comprehensive practical training they receive, simply by growing up on Earth, Hild.